for anything that the police said happened to have happened.
Not at all, Lawrence, and I'm glad that you took the time to show let your viewers hear the two different dispatchers, because one dispatcher did take all of the information, but the way the information was relayed to the police, it was not complete. And just the mere mention of the word black male causes some police officers to decide that they want to go out and shoot in that way. Tamir Rice was not a black male. He was a 12-year-old boy. And his mother, his father, and his family is in agony right now because this little boy, not man, African-American boy, and too often in this country, young African-American males do not get the privilege of being able to grow up. And I say this to you, Lawrence, from a deep space of being a mother of an African-American son who was racially profiled, having a husband that was racially profiled. I mean, almost every black male that I know has been racially profiled at some point in their lives. And my son is a police officer right now. So I understand the burden of skin. And too many African-American parents have to teach their children, especially their black males, their sons, about the burden of skin. This is heavy in every single way. It does not make sense. And we should wait for the investigation, don't get me wrong, and the Rice family is calling for that. But what we do know tonight for a fact is a 12-year-old boy, somebody's baby boy, is dead.
And Jerry Reed, did you see anything on that video and the way that the police approached that looked like Tamir Rice had any possible chance of surviving this encounter, that there was anything he could possibly do to stay alive, with a police officer jumping out of the passenger side of that car and shooting instantaneously?
No, I think that, frankly, absolutely not. I mean, and some of the things that stood out, first of all, it was the rookie officer who jumped out of that passenger side of the car, basically jumped out and instantly started shooting. There was no time at all for any human being to comply with whatever orders he may have given, and obviously there's no sound on the video. The more experienced officer was still in the car. The other thing is that video that you showed, Lawrence, was truncated. It didn't show the previous part of the video where you saw Tamir Rice basically just being a kid. You know, yes. He's walking around, he's making snowballs, he's doing very childlike things, and yet from the person who called 911, who can understand someone sees a person with a gun, they get nervous and they call in, but everything else about the way people communicated about this little kid who was acting very childlike, even pointing the gun. You know what little kids have been doing from time immemorial? They've been playing cops and robbers and pointing sticks and pretending they were guns, or toy guns, or water guns and pointing them around. These are how kids behave. So the fact that the fear of black men is so pervasive that he could be described as being about 20 when he's 12, right, that he's described as a guy instead of a boy. And there have been studies that show that people perceive African-American boys as men even when they are obviously children. And if you see that picture of Tamir Rice's face, he is clearly a child. You know, and Senator Turner talked about her kids. My kids are both older than this boy, and to me they are boys. They are children. They're teenagers. But that presumption of boyhood is absolutely missing from the lives of young black men. They just don't get to have boyhood because they're always perceived as either men or supermen, as incredibly powerfully, palpably, almost inextricably evil and lunging and attacking, and never perceived as ever afraid, passive, or trying to comply. He didn't even have a chance to comply.
And Nina Turner, this gun was at some point described as a toy gun. It turns out it's a pellet gun that fires a soft edge rubber kind of pellet that can't really do any significant harm to anyone. There was no way for the police officers at that speed to evaluate, is this a toy? And they were not told by the dispatcher that the person who called it in said it might be fake. They were given no reason to think it was anything but a person with a gun by the dispatcher, but it's still their job on the scene to evaluate those facts for themselves.
Absolutely, Lawrence, and everything that you said is fair. That is fair. fair. But we do need to deal with, you know, from Tamir Rice to even John Crawford. If you remember John Crawford in Beaver Creek, very similar, even though John Crawford was 22 years old, but the same thing. He's in the Walmart. He's oblivious. He's on his cell phone. He has this gun in his hand that is sold in the store. And the police come in there and they shoot, and seconds later, he is dead. Very, very similar circumstances. We have to deal with how police relate to African Americans and Latinos in this country. The burden of skin should not be tolerated in the 21st century. And back to a point that Joy made about some of the ways that even Darren Wilson, when it comes to Michael Brown, how he described him. You know, Professor Charles Carroll in the 1900s wrote this article, this essay called "The Negro the Beast," as he described using the Bible to describe black people, particularly black men, as beast-like. That same phenomenon, our issue with race in this country, we have to deal with this, and we have to go beyond conversations to action, and that needs to happen right now. This weight that is going on in 2014, this burden that folks are carrying in 2014, it is about a sense of fairness. And you can't have communities of color who fear the police, who do not believe that they're going to get a fair shot. All of that is real. And something that President Obama said in his speech about we have work to do, and we cannot pretend that America is everything that it can be. This is all of our burdens to carry. And baby boys like Tamir Rice should not be gunned down like that.
And Lawrence, if I could just say one very quick thing. The other thing is that African Americans, we keep hearing responses from some, not from everyone, that essentially these young boys are bringing this fate on themselves, that they're not doing enough to comply, that somehow they're causing their own deaths. It rings very hollow to African Americans when people say that. When you have people walking around with actual guns for whom police stop, evaluate, and use their training. I know police officers. Where is the part of the police training where you're supposed to evaluate the situation, try to communicate with the person, try to find out what's happening? It's just instantaneous bullets flying. And when you have people walking around with real guns just as a demonstration project, and they're spoken to and evaluated, but these black men and boys are instantly shot, any other argument that is something's wrong with it will ring really hollow to African Americans.
Joy Reid and Nina Turner, thank you both very much for joining me tonight.